meetup of the new year. Last year we were API Security Meetup. A lot of really interesting topics to do with security, but we kind of ran the gauntlet on that. And so we wanted to kind of rebrand it going into this year to give us a little bit broader scope of APIs. Although we will still very much focus on APIs, AI, and security, right? Those are going to be key for the foreseeable future, and we'll continue to highlight those. Today, we have Damon Sorrentino and James Quid. They're from Kong, and one of the latest and greatest technology, new shiny toys is in the concept of an AI gateway. So they're here today to talk about that and what Kong's doing in that space. So it should be pretty interesting.
Thank you, John.
With that, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thank you. James, Mike. There you go.
Nobody wants to hear me.
No, we all want to hear you. We all want to hear you. Everybody. I'm going to be kind of going back and forth because our wonderful you had an obstructive view.
Right, those are the cheap seats.
Yeah. Cheap seats. That's right. So thanks, John, for introducing James and I. From Kong, lots of you, and some of you I don't know. James as well.
You're going to say I have a lot of familiar faces. Probably know most everyone here, but if not, Dane, just a quick background I will.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been in Kong for about 6 years. I'm a solutions engineer. I do a lot of solutioning on the pre-sale side. Worked with a lot of people at Kroger 8451 and stuff like that. My background is a development programmer for 25, 30 years. So I've solutioned a lot of things, and I kind of got into the sales aspect, and it's fun. So happy to be here. Got James.
He doesn't give himself enough credit. I mean, he was hands on the keyboard on the other side of the table, where maybe many of you are. He's also a CTO of his own company at some point.
That would fail.
You didn't have to throw that part.
That's all right.
But you were still the CTO.
That's true. True.
But, incredible asset, great guy to work with, great guy to ask questions. So whether it's up here, I personally just want to kind of encourage this to be interactive, right? Like nobody wants to sit here and be talked at. So we got slides, we got content to cover. It's also not very well rehearsed, so we'll stumble through a little bit of it. But let's make it interactive. Let's make this a discussion. And then again, myself, James, with Kong, I'm one of our strategic account executives. My focus is really just partnering with large organizations to help drive their digital transformation initiatives based around how to leverage AI, how to leverage APIs, and a new expansion of our product set or our platform is really the AI gateway, which we'll try to keep this as general as possible to that technology. It is an emerging space, so we don't have a lot of general slides, or you might see a Kong logo in here we didn't scrub yet, but we'll try to keep it a very general conversation. Excited to get
turn into a Kong commercial. So.
Excellent. With that,
let's go to the next slide. Yeah, for sure. So this slide is, API's been around forever, right? I mean, I started working when I was doing the Win32 APIs, working inside of the Windows subsystems, right? So, mainframes had APIs, the PC era. That's kind of when I came about. And then when the web started to come around, then you started getting more network APIs, right? And mobile cloud, phones calling things, computers calling computers. And now we have reached this AI era, which APIs are just, just exploding, right? So this slide is just kind of showing the upward tick of, it's not getting any smaller. Lots of APIs.
I think everyone in this audience probably has an appreciation for it, which is why you guys are here today. But I think the industry is really starting to get to a point, organizations are getting to a point where it's just not, some sort of an integration, but it's actually looking at as a product, as something that the organization should be investing in and continuing to build out as far as functionality. And ultimately, it's driving the entire customer experience. If you start looking at the evolution of what APIs are supporting from mobile really onto AI, which is where everybody's investing, everybody's focusing the future of how do we leverage this technology. All of that's going to be powered via API, right? So it's never been more important to be able to manage these things, and they pretty much run in parallel. So.
Yep. Very good. Thank you. He's gonna run this.
I'm here to.
No, you're good.
I'm the sidekick support.
He has to earn his keep, right?
No, that's great. I love it. That's awesome. So this is kind of explaining, how did we deal with APIs in these eras, right? Back in, we had load balancers, right? browsers went through a load balancer, and now we're talking directly to servers in the web era, right? And then when mobile came along, API management became a thing, right? We needed to add policy to those load balancers. You know, authentication, we wanted to pull that policy out of the applications and put them in the API management layer so you can operationalize all the different, you know, rate limiting transformations. You don't want to build that in the applications because you can't make it generic. And then cloud natives, you know, microservices were really, you know, coming along. So service mesh and Ingress and Kubernetes. And then now we have all these AI apps that are being created and AI gateway. So we need to be able to control and observe and, you know, govern things that are going to the LLMs. Why does it say LMM? That must be a typo.
It's a new one.
It's a new
Just
one.
came out.
Right. Right. So, you know, the next slides are going to kind of show, you know, how this AI gateway kind of functions, right? Why do you need it?
I'm curious, to pulse check, has anyone been a part of, or whether it's directly or in fringe, like development of smart applications, leveraging LLMs in the business applications? Okay. So I'd also encourage, you know, thoughts, questions along the way, and for others that haven't, you familiar with the concepts, right? I just want to make sure we're not like skipping over stuff. I want to assume everybody knows, but if not, please stop us. There's no stupid questions.
We might learn something too.
Ultimately, right, all of these were designed to do the same thing. We need security, we need governance, we need scalability, right? And so, again, along with the evolution of AI, right, we need a way to do that at scale. And as you see, platform teams and application teams and dev teams and silos of infrastructure expand and scale rapidly, how do you manage AI in a secure way to, like, you know, get the benefits from it, but also it exposes a whole bunch of other security concerns that really haven't been anticipated or covered by, you know, the other pre-existing technology and infrastructure. So
That LMM was not a typo. That's a large multimodal model.
Very good. Right? Are you BSing?
I never know anymore.
I did see him typing on his phone.
I looked it up because
Well, we did, but okay, it probably was a typo.
Well, David's a very smart guy. That's the first question anybody should ask me.
He asked ChatGPT what it could be.
Anyway, so this, you know, if you look at here, it's like as you embark on your journey of creating an AI app or a client, you know, the most basic path is, well, I'm going to write an app. I'm going to talk to an LLM. See, that says LLM, not LMM.
Also
Good job.
valid.
Also,
You regressed.
you regressed. So
Damon and I didn't create these slides, marketing did. So
Yeah,
we
right.
gotta talk to him a little bit.
So this is, you know,
AI did.
yeah, I did. That's right. So I mean, you know, similar to, you know, your microservices, your basic. I'm going to make an app, talk to a backend. That's what this is kind of depicting. Obviously, this is not optimal, right? It's a point-to-point connection. You have to write integrations in each app to talk to different LLMs, you know, and it just does not scale, right? Because when I click, you can see you need all these types of things, you know, to make your applications robust. Encryption, access control, you know, rate limiting, prompt versioning, semantic guardrailing. There's all these things that you can do that you certainly don't want to bake into your applications.
I mean, ultimately, you got all of this data, and then you got a use case. Usually, and I'd be curious to see, raise of hands, if most of the use cases that you guys have been involved with are internal to the organization or external. From my experience, and maybe Damon's as well, it kind of starts internal. It's very much a crawl, walk, run. But by the time you start getting to the external use cases, there is a lot to really be concerned about, because that's one of the fastest ways to have, you know, a breach potentially. People can do things to manipulate those, to extract data, to prompt it, to overwhelm it. There's a ton of ways. So there's a lot that you need to consider up front, and that's where I think, you know, some of the teams here that we've already met and talked with have really, you know, done a great job of, you know, thinking through and doing some of that. But it's either you build it, you put it in your application code, or you look for tools like an AI gateway, something that actually does some of these things out of the box, so that you can be able to do this at scale and not have to kind of recreate the wheel.
That's right. And then we have these things called the agentic workflows is another thing that people are creating. It's agentic workflows are, agents that are virtual employees, right? So they're gonna ask questions to, it's a middle piece where these agents will talk to APIs on a human's behalf.
I think this is probably one of the coolest areas, and
Yeah.
maybe I would be curious to hear if there's any use cases in the room. But looking at how you augment your workforce today, if you want to scale your company either at headcount or software's always been designed to automate and do things more efficiently. But looking at how you can use AI and AI agents really as an augmentation to your workforce, right? So building an army of AI agents essentially is kind of how organizations are looking to expand. Like talking to our co-founder recently, they were just looking at how can we create an AI agent to do like API management kind of PM role. Like if you think about all the documentation that gets submitted and put into a dev portal, and you got to make sure things are accurate or update. Like what if there's an agent, right? A bot that could help manage the dev portal, interact with the dev teams, correct or update things. So like even our own company is looking at how do we build agents into like API management as a platform and put that into our product. And so I would assume maybe some of you all have been involved in projects or ideas, but I'd be curious to hear if you want to share any of those.
So we did a hackathon, and one of the use cases we actually have in production now, and that's just a RAG for internal documentation. But the other use case that we did was allowing people to basically use our APIs through an AI chat interface. And kind of the idea was like it's a great way for sort of business people to understand like what's possible with these APIs and
Contextually give it information.
like just like we have some public APIs like products and stores because we're Kroger, and so like where can I get milk? And it'll go query the APIs and come back and give you the answer. So
A lot of the agent, like an example, I was reading a good article, actually on IBM's with it. IBM's got some pretty good documentation. And they were talking, an agentic workflow, like, okay, you asked the question, where would I get milk? And it would tell you where to get milk.
Right.
So think of it, an agentic workflow as, all right, say I'm a customer, it's tech support, I got a problem with my, router or whatever. Usually you ask a chatbot, ask you some questions, let me transfer you to this person.
Right.
So an agentic, what that would be, it would be, all right, now the agent is gonna say, okay, I'm gonna take the necessary steps to help you troubleshoot the problem. I'm gonna ask you these questions until you get to the point where you resolved it. And it's gonna do that logical thinking that a human would do. That's kind of where that is going. So is it plugged in? Okay, yeah, it's plugged in. Is, all this questions that a human would logically go through to troubleshoot that issue, that would be like a virtual agent. That's kind of the idea between that.
Honestly, it blows my mind. I find this stuff so interesting. Wherever, I don't know who it was I was reading it from, that did a study. They said 2029 AI is going to be as smart as humans, right? And then, like, it's surpassing us. That's 4 years. It's pretty wild. So I feel like we're very tip of the iceberg for like how this evolves. I don't know what it looks like, but we do know it's going to be run on APIs. And it needs to
Another
be governed in
stat
security.
along those lines I saw recently, and I can't remember, I think it was math, right? What level of math it could do. And like ChatGPT 3.0 wasn't great, and the latest ones can do, math better than.
Oh, really?
Like, or coding examples. They started off ranked like, I guess there's a standard coding test that people can take to see where you rank as a coder. I did not know that, but apparently there is. And the ChatGPT 3.0 was ranked like 1/1,000,000th or something, which is still pretty good. If you think of all the coders in the world, you're 1/1,000,000th, that's probably still pretty good. But the latest ones, they were rated at like 127th.
Really?
So, I mean, that's
And those are like 6-month releases.
6
I mean,
months,
those are,
in 6 months, that's how much it improved. I don't remember which model it was and version and all that, but
that was an impressive stat that stuck out. You know.
Yes.
It's helped save my bacon a couple times.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I really don't want to write this recursive function to do this. Hey, Chad, tell me if you're ready to ask a really specific question, it'll come back. And I did it in Lua for I was using a Rusty library, and I just didn't know how to do it. I wanted to verify a token or do something crazy. I'm like, oh man, I don't want to think about this all day. I just busted out the chat. It saved me a week or no, about 5 hours worth of work. It was great.
The three use cases I've really seen are like chatbots and you have the Copilot and you have coding and then you have
This is Copilot.
the agents, and then what I've also been learning more about, and again this is I won't tangent here, I promise, but like you think about the meta glasses where they're kind of like out looking, the Tesla cars, you think of the Ring doorbell, those things are scanning like the real physical world. So not just like taking data off the internet from websites, but actually scanning the physical dimensions of what exists. And so the evolution of AI robots and drones and all the other stuff that comes that can actually interact in our physical world is, I mean, that's all in the next 24 months or whatever. So long story short, all of it's going to ultimately be powered by APIs, and so we're trying to stay ahead of that and help organizations to stay ahead of that and find a way to do that in a secure and governable manner.
So I mean, you have all of these. So we talk about all these applications and apps and stuff, right? So I mean, there's a lot of these. You're going to need to do certain things. Governance is one of them, right? You need to be able to govern who's calling these things, how they're calling them, making sure they're not sending inappropriate data or data that's harmful or whatever. So governance is a thing, right? You have to be able to observe it, right? You have to get who's how much money is this going to be costing? These things
Tend
are
to be
not
very
cheap,
expensive.
cheap, and very expensive.
The tokens.
And then you have to instill some guardrails in privacy, right? So, and infrastructure readiness. I'm not exactly sure what that means.
So from a performance standpoint, if AI is
right.
leading your customer experience, because this is now becoming an external use case, performance is everything. Because real-time interaction, right? You're in Kroger and you're in the aisle and you're price shopping or you want to understand what's on sale. Like you either get that information when you need it or you don't. And so the timeliness, the performance, and the reliability, resiliency of it is all going to be the infrastructure that ultimately powers it. And so that's really, again, one of those considerations that's going to drive the success.
Right. So that kind of leads into, all right, so now here's our first commercial. Connect API. So you have all these APIs in your API catalog, and that you want to be able to govern, observe, at load balancing, retries, as they speak to all the different LLMs in your ecosystem. So what we've created at Kong is a series of plugins. I think everyone here is familiar with
This
Kong
is the
Gateway.
slight Kong commercial part.
Well,
This exists
we're
this
kinda
exists in the
only-
platform that we
We're
offer
the only
today.
people doing the AI gateway. There's a couple of them out there, but
There's
I'm not hip to them
some
all.
main
So
providers.
I've went kicking and screaming in AI
A lot of
times.
organizations have also developed their own, right? Which is totally possible as well. And that's again that decision of weighing out, do you want to create something that exists or build on top of what already does. But ultimately, these are the things that the organization, your company should be thinking about and preparing for if you don't already have these things in place.
This is just a list of how we would implement governance privacy. So we have a series of plugins that you plug into our gateway that do all that stuff. Infrastructure for AI, right? And so this, what's a universal API, right? So I have all these devices that need to talk to different LLMs, and you don't want to talk to Llama or you don't want to talk to Bedrock. I want to talk to a single point of entry and be able to talk to all the different LLMs for using the best LLM for the job, right? And Llama, you may have a trained model good for one thing and another model good for another. Well, I want to source those requests from a single place. It makes things easy to manage, right? And easier to observe. You innovate faster. You get more product. You improve in your productivity with a universal API into the AI world.
I'd take a raise of hands, just curious, the few people who have interacted with Smart Applications, how many LLMs, AI models have you guys leveraged or do you currently?
I think 6.
Five, six,
6?
yeah,
Okay.
3. So more than
And are
Two.
those, like, if you took ChatGPT, you have 2 or 3, you know, .3, .4, so are you considering those, or are you thinking like?
No, just the actual providers, so many more if you're actually
Yeah,
talking
'cause
about each
typically we're
version.
finding like 17 to 25,
Yeah.
most of the customers we're talking to now, and we've seen upwards of 100.
Wow.
And so what ends up happening,
100.
yeah, right, I
Well,
know.
you fine tune the model and then suddenly you have lots of different variants.
Yeah, because you might be customizing things, right? So what ends up happening if you don't have a gateway, right? Something like Universal API, something that's helped to manage this, you end up codifying all of that into your applications themselves and be able to talk to, you know, all the different LLMs. Those things evolve, like weekly, monthly releases. All of a sudden you find yourself in this, you know, constant maintenance of trying to update and maintain and make sure things aren't breaking and continue to talk. So a universal API is one of those things ultimately your organization is going to want to have to be able to talk to multiple LLMs, and then the how matters, right? Because it's one thing to be able to talk to multiple ones, it's another thing to be able to talk to multiple ones, load balance between them, decide, you know, which one's more cost effective, maybe have some intelligence behind it for, hey, this use case should go to this model because it supports it better, but this other question or this other use case should go to a different one, or hey, we're out of our quota on this one, so maybe we should go to the free version instead of the paid one to make sure we don't go over our cost constraints, or we should restrict it based on this team versus that team because this team is using it for free and that team flipped the bill. There's a lot. So these are the things that your organization ultimately starts to think about, and we find a lot of companies haven't gotten there yet because it's still early days. So, you know, hopefully this is helpful, but we'd love to answer questions. I think I saw on the back.
Yeah, I just I see this diagram here, and the first thing that comes to my mind is, well, what if there's an update on the methods with which you can interact with, say, OpenAI? Like,
right.
you know, like one of the reasons, at least when I'm working with cloud services, and they have their built-in methods to be able to interact with these services, and I tend to push away from using them because I, feel or I've seen or I've been told that they are not up to date with the latest that's out there. You know, so that when I see this, I wonder what the methodology that you guys have to avoid or to always have these things up to date.
We're basically proxy to OpenAI API.
So the methods would remain the same.
We're just proxying to. We're not doing any. I'll show you some of the plugins. What we're doing like prompt decorators, prompt templating. We're actually doing some semantic caching, things of that nature. But we're not doing AI inside the plugins. We're just adding to. So like if you write an application using OpenAI API, you'll call the gateway instead of calling the LLM. It's just proxying and then adding value on top of that.
Yeah, but I mean the method,
The chat or the
So-
completion.
Are you talking like language
Usually,
or-
in your API call, you specify exactly which model you want. So it's not just like an OpenAI call. You'll say like, hey, I want to use 4.0. Then you can also specify like the release date of that version. So because there's actually like lots of different versions of 4.0. So if you want to like have very consistent logic or responses, then you can peg to that like release of 4.0. And then if you want to get super consistent, you can also use a seed so that you don't get variability in the responses. You can say this is the starting seed to do the generation with. So you have a lot of control over how much like you want to lock down onto one thing and control when you actually update.
And those, you configure those in the proxy. Like if you're using the Kong AI gateway, you can configure those in the proxy plugin itself.
Ah, nice.
Right? So you don't, so you can change things without changing the application. Right? That's what's kind of nice about it. You can change application functionality without twiddling code and releasing new software.
Yeah, that makes me nervous, man. Because are you
Yeah.
going
Well,
to?
we have to put
Well,
the
I was gonna
guardrails,
say-
you have to have guardrails to do that, before you're
Yeah.
doing it.
But so like, what do you do if you're allowing people to change that? Like, are you doing anything to support, running regressions to make sure that things don't change
That's a process
from
that
models?
you have to put in place.
oh,
Right, right,
we have it. in
Yeah, yeah.
place, But,
right.
like, is
Throw
there
the-
any way to like plug that in to some of the
Yeah,
stuff
well,
that you're doing?
Yes, I mean,
Okay.
because so these plugins that I'm talking about can be configured with declarative configuration that would be checked into your source code repository. So, proper guardrails from, doing CI/CD deployment of your gateway and things of that nature, AI goes right along with it.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Is that kind
A
of?
little bit, but it's
I see
in
it
the
as like
details.
you have the full spectrum that you can do. Like, so you could have the gateway dynamically deciding which version, which model you go after, but then you're kind of not going to know what quality
Oh,
your
right,
system's
right,
going
for
to have.
sure, for sure.
But if you run out of quota, you can dynamically adjust, right? So there's an advantage there if that's what you want to index for. Or you can index for like, no, I'm gonna tell you exactly which version of the model I want to use, and so it's going to behave like that. You're going to get the same exact model every time, right? Like you're going to tell it exactly which model, exactly which version, and exactly which seed you want to use, right? Like that, and that we leave that to the caller to do. So if a team wants to move to a newer version, they can do that. But if a team wants to stay pegged on a version because they've tested it extensively and they know this is working well, then they're welcome to do that as well. And at this point, we haven't really had the gateway making those decisions. We leave it to the individual teams building the AI apps.
But the gateway can choose a particular model
No,
based on
Well,
applicability.
no. Well, that's an option.
It can.
That's an option.
It's an option.
Okay.
That's an option. We let the caller to the gateway
Sure.
tell us explicitly which model they want.
But if you had a control plane per team, you would have a proxy per team, and you can control that per team at the gateway there.
So what
But they're
do those
Uh,
heuristics look like?
Right.
What do the rules look like that allow the gateway to decide which model to call?
I'll have to show you. I can show you these things.
Okay.
It's an option. Ultimately, you want.
My one use case being, maybe my team has multiple things, multiple AI apps in an ecosystem, and I wanna be able to have them all stay, I wanna change the model for all of them at once. So, I mean, maybe you can do that with deployment stuff.
Yeah,
Maybe you
I'd
can
strongly
do that.
recommend against that, man. Like, each app is so different,
Yeah.
and you have to run it through like a whole bunch of tests to see that it's behaving the way you want it to behave. And if you just change the model on everybody all at once, like
People are just gonna
so let's take it into the API world. Can you imagine like if you were calling in an API version like V1, and then you just decided like, nah, I'm gonna bounce everybody to V2 now because I feel like it. That's not going to go very well. Like, let people peg to the model. Let people make the migration to a new model at the time they want to make the model change.
In Canary, put some traffic over, see how it works. I don't know. You have to like full on flip.
But I mean, what my point was,
From
you
a
have
governance
So,
perspective,
yes,
yeah, no.
but if you think about that consumer user, to give them the ability to be agnostic to a particular model, but based on the kind of question they're asking, go to what would be the quote-unquote best model based on some heuristics, I think it's kind of interesting.
Oh, it's an interesting idea. So maybe I'm just not comfortable with it yet. But I mean, what I've seen is that
It's use case specific.
each
Right.
application, like, it's super important how you set up your system prompts and everything. That's going to drive the behavior. So that's out of the user's control. And that system prompt seems to work with a specific version of a specific model well. And there's been talk of like, oh, you can just switch models, and I'm like, it's not my experience. Like, yeah, you really like. It's
Yeah.
tricky to kind of dial in its behavior, and you spend a lot of time doing that to get it to do what you want. And if someone was just like changing the model on me, like that, yeah, I don't. And maybe it's just a comfort level thing.
Well, and I think part of the problem is that the level of support for a lot of the automation for validating when you've moved to new models is not good yet. Like, I think there's a huge opportunity space there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So to say that another way, like as a software developer, I'm used to writing unit tests, running unit tests, and seeing them pass. The moment you go to agentic AI, like it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, right? So feel free to use that one in the future.
I might steal
So it's a machine learning model, right? It's a large language model, but it's not 100% accurate. Like, so now you have to move into the world of, okay, like 80% accurate may be good enough for my use case, and now I need to have a suite of tests that determine, am I 80% accurate? But that's more like data science testing of like, what's my recall, what's my F1, and I have to now move into that space, and you can't just write unit tests to do that. Like, you're going to need a testing suite, and then to Jess's point, I wholeheartedly agree that the tooling around that just doesn't seem awesome yet. So when you ask like, well, how do I do that? You let me know when you find out,
It's
please.
very manual right
Do it
now.
manual right now. Yeah.
I mean, there's things like
There's some
Yeah, there's
automation.
some, but they're not awesome.
Yeah.
Can I say I love how provocative this topic was? It's like, like, there's no way we're switching models. It's not happening. The idea that so we're trying to, and again, without the Kong commercial here, but we're trying to build off of user feedback, right? We're working with large organizations with multitude of use cases and trying to like, okay, what are we consistently hearing? We're actually hearing we would like that. There is use cases where we would like to be able to switch models. Probably not a good fit for a lot of the reasons for most use cases, maybe. The other thing we've actually heard a lot and we've built is also semantic caching. So we're getting the same request over and over and over again.
Yes, good.
What if it's just worded slightly differently? Can we return that response without needing to go burn tokens, or can we speed up that response because we're able to hit the gateway and come back without going any further? So there's a lot we're trying to think through, and these are things that
This
enjoy the participation and
Yeah,
hearing
this is one of
the
prompt
discussion.
management is kind of fun. As a software developer, I like to kind of templatize things. It's fun. It creates consistency, and so like a prompt template with a prompt decorator. So what it helps govern what your applications are going to basically. I have demos for these. I'll bust out a demo. They're kind of fun. So
We got to power through the slides. So I think it's all slides.
what's that?
I said if we're gonna let's just jump to the
Yeah,
demo.
demo.
So.
This is APIs and IPAs. So.
Yeah, there you go. So this is Cone Connect, and we have this.
Better,
Ted, you sound like a guy that's gotten bit by dependencies before.
So I have this data
Maybe more than
protection route that's basically, I want to process this JSON and anonymize it, right? So I'm sending, process this JSON, that's my prompt, process this JSON for me, name Jack Stevens, social security number at 101, credit card number this, and reply only with the process JSON, right? So I'm gonna send this request to some LLM, I don't remember which one it is.
GPT-4 0613.
Thank you.
Yeah, see, so they've actually got the date of the release of GPT-4 that you're hitting. Yeah.
So you see what it did was it anonymized the names, person 1 and person 2, but I still have the social security numbers
And the credit card.
and the credit card.
Gonna go
What the hell?
shopping.
Yeah. So what you can do, which is kind of
You're
neat,
not buying much.
there's a plugin called a prompt decorator, which allows you to prepend and append things to prompts before they get sent to the LLM. So I can go to this prompt decorator plugin, and I say, oh, I want to edit this. I'm going to say, okay, here's currently this thing is saying when it says process that JSON, the plugin at the gateway says it appends saying replace all real person names with anonymous ones. And mask PII data. I'm making this change at the gateway. So I save that plugin configuration. And now send those.
So
And it just masked my data. So I put that prompt at the gateway there.
And this works because you had just called out earlier that if we're using the Kong SaaS product correctly, we're really allowing teams to kind of individually control their control plane. We're not just having one to rule them all, but
Correct.
rather they're only hitting their thing with this prompt. So
Yes.
Therefore, it's okay.
Therefore, it's okay. This is my application. I mean,
Yeah.
I come from the federated viewpoint, right? I don't have a big centralized gateway. I have a gateway for my own team with my own application, right? I can use AI however I darn well please.
But maybe not all the apps want the same stuff done in the
Well,
plugin.
actually, you can just attach that plugin to what APIs you want to
Yeah.
attach it to, right?
That's right.
So like each API can have their own plugin.
And you can push down policies and other rules
Oh, yeah.
to enforce some things, perhaps.
Yes.
Yeah,
For sure.
so like you could have like a standard one for all of them and
Yeah.
then specific ones, yeah.
That's right. Another one that I kind of is this.
How many plugins can you have on a given route before it starts to affect performance?
Well, depends on how much caching you're doing. I mean, well, it's only going to make one request, right? It's going to process it, so there's really no limit, because it's going to process and then
context
send the
window.
request off to the LLM as a unit.
Context window size, but that's probably less of an issue with a lot of the
Yeah,
new
yeah, I don't
models.
Yeah. So another one is a prompt, is a templating agent, or a templating. So like, all right, I have this message template program, and it says, all right, and the input you're passing this template is golang and main function. What is it? That doesn't mean much, you know, to it. But so if you go in, and there's another, where is it? Yeah, what is the this is chat. Find this right. Let's see, 3 chat. Okay, that's the one. Oh, darn. Wait, chat. Wait. So then, sorry, I just confused myself. By the way, this is the configuration for the plugin that proxies to all the LLMs. So this is where you set all of your, you know, themes. Balancer retries, you know, if you're talking to Azure, there's just all the different configurations you set inside the proxy plugin, which is in turn talks to the LLM. And then I was trying to find my service. Hold on a second, sorry. Jet.
So I think the interesting part while he's doing this is these are configurations that without an AI gateway type technology, right, or a proxy that maybe was built in-house would need to be configured within your application code. So the idea is to operationalize this outside of your application, so your developers don't need to worry about how all this is configured, right? They can call the gateway or the plugin or whatever they've been designated to do, and these things are handled for them in that aspect. Again, scalability, right, and governance and control.
So I am templatizing. So in this plugin, I have 3 different templates. I have a programmer template, I have a summarize template, and I have a geography template. Okay, so the programmer template looks like this. It just sends a chat message, chat completion message that says, write me a program and return me only the code and no other text. And you'll notice you have program in little handlebar or mustache thingies. And then you also have the name, and then you have a language. Okay. So in my gateway, so the request that I'm sending to the gateway, I'm just specifying, okay, here, use the programmer template and specify my input as golang and main function. And you can hit send, and the plugin says, oh, I'm going to pick that template off that configuration and plug in the values and send that up to the LLM. So that's how you kind of get consistency in your completions that you're sending to the LLM. And then if you need to change it, because without changing it in the application, you just put it in the plugin. Does that make sense? It's useful, you know, is for governance and kind of keeping consistency within your calls to your LLM. And there's your golang function. So, what else? All right, let's go back to the slides. Enough downtime for me now.
Is there an easy way for, let's say I'm an application developer and we have this in, I know that those plugins do a lot of stuff for me, but I don't actually know what, and I want to know what. How do I tell?
That's a good question.
I don't think I understood the question.
So which plugins are in play? I make a call, I get a weird response back, I wanna know, what happened to it?
Oh, it is a good question.
I translate heckler,
The LLM models haven't been updated for my language, I guess, but Ted has it down.
There is some magic going on, right? There's some magic that you have to understand. You look on, okay, so in this instance, I'd go to my plugin list. So in my gateway service, I have my AI, I think it's my AI.
Is this something that like a typical application developer would have access to?
Yes and no, maybe,
Okay,
maybe.
okay,
It depends on how you're abstracting away the gateway,
yeah.
right? If you're, you know, we had spoken, who were we talking, with,
Just about every organization I've spoken to tends to have a like centralized Gen AI COE, essentially, because it's just one of those things that's beyond most applications teams, and it requires that scale, because basically every team in some fashion seems to be wanting to leverage this for different use cases, and so ultimately somebody's, in the organizations we've spoken with, they seem to own it, but then it seems to be very centralized. The goal of getting to kind of a federated approach, which is what our organization is trying to help enable, right? The same way we've done with the Kong Gateway, you know, how do we do this from an infrastructure standpoint, right? From control plane, data plane, you know, also from like guardrails and deployment standpoint, can we do it declaratively with, you know?
so this is all work in progress. So here you'd actually just go to the service that you're, you know, calling, and you can see the plugins that are installed in the service, and you can just open them up and look and see what it's doing. You'd have to have access to the control plane itself,
Couldn't you see this in like a
or you can look. You can actually, if you can look at this in YAML format too. So this would technically be in your CI/CD, in your GitHub repository. So if you're doing GitOps, all of these configurations are represented as, you know, a configuration file. So you go to your source code, it's like, oh, that's what it's doing. You can see exactly what it's
take
doing.
that as a good follow-up question.
And yeah, and also, but now I know we're also coming up with this AI manager coming up soon too, which is going to allow you to do more. Instead of installing a bunch of plugins, and you know, it'll allow you to kind of turn on an LLM, and you know, it's like more of a macro for enabling AI on applications. I don't know. It's vaporware right now, so it's kind of hard to describe. But,
Sounds like you can make it up.
yeah. Yes. That's right. But to answer the question there, to know what's going on, you're going to have to look at all the plugin configuration.
One question.
Yeah, sure.
So when the number of agents also keep increase and the governance process also keep increase, then there are a lot here the complexity will get increased.
For
So
sure.
how about the response time? Because if the application is directly going to call the specific LLM, getting the response instead of that going through the API gateways, and it's going to take a certain process based on the governance, because here, just example of the masking the credit itself, credit card details itself, which takes time, right?
Right.
But it's a simple one, right?
Sure.
So if it comes as an enterprise levels, there will be a multiple governance, because people is going to keep adding based on the risk,
Mm-hmm.
right? So how that it is a normal kind of day-to-day applications, okay, but response-specific applications, right? How we will handle latency-wise.
There are caching plugins. So there we have. There's like semantic caching. Okay, like here's an example. All right, let me go to my semantic caching. So basically, what we're creating a vector database and doing some semantic caching. Let me go to my. Here we go. Like, okay, what's the best temperature for cooking a medium rare steak? Right. So I can send that, and it will take some time. All right, best temperature for cooking medium rare is approximately blah blah blah. Now I'm going to ask you, what's the
35 degrees.
yeah? So now I come back and ask the same question, but I want a ribeye steak. It's a different semantically, it's the same thing. Because you may be a purist, and maybe a ribeye cooks different from a T-bone. I don't know, but if I call that, you'll see that it came back very fast because it cached that semantic. Okay, it's steak, ribeye. It's the same question, but asked a different way.
In here that it was a cached response.
Yeah, look at cache prompt tokens.
Oh yeah, so you can see how many but I'm pretty sure it says in the,
I don't know. I've never looked
I
at
think
it.
it says cached response.
Sometimes you have to do it a few times.
I mean, that's cached because it's coming back pretty quick.
I think, doesn't it have to be over 1,024 tokens or something like that? I mean, at least with OpenAI.
There's
That's
actually a
true.
detail in the.
Maybe, I don't know. Yes, question?
So it mentioned the model was like GPT-4
Mhm.
and the version. So it was deployed. It was usually it will call another the model's API on the background or like how that process works. So usually Llama models are not deployed anywhere. So
Okay.
so you are deploying the model in your data center
No,
or something like
No,
that.
we are. So, see this header? I can pick which LLM I'm going to based on the header value. Okay, so we're just proxying to the different ones that are deployed.
Already deployed and
Yes.
because like you're just grabbing the response
Correct.
from this gateway.
Yeah.
Okay. So another question, like if we are prompting like querying a model, like sometimes this like as of now what I've seen, what if the context dependent our question is like previous question we queried about one API request and we have sent some data and next request depends on the first request.
Oh, like streaming?
Yeah, like I
Is
mean you give like some context
There's
of
memory.
the conversation.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
It's a
So
thread.
you're opening any session.
Yes.
between that.
We have, there on the plugin, there's a checkbox you can configure to do that exact thing. It'll maintain state and things,
So,
it'll handle it
so
for
the
you.
previous responses are preserved and the model will understand.
That's right. So the gateway, that is coming, I think it's out now or in 3.10, but it's gonna have that.
Usually that's how
That's right.
they did in ChatGPT or any model, like they work without that context independent. If it is context independent, then we can't ask more questions.
Correct.
Again, we need to build from the scratch every prompt.
Staying vendor agnostic, I think that would be a criteria to look into for any gateway you either would build internally or evaluate from a vendor perspective. But I think it's a great consideration. Absolutely. I don't know what the answer is for
Yeah,
this.
I mean, to date, we've, in the application side, we keep track of the whole chat and we send the whole thing every time.
Yeah.
So it's nice that the gateway can potentially handle some of that for us, but as it stands right now, it is like very stateless, and it's up to us to kind of send the entire context each time.
But if you send entire context, LLMs have context length.
Yeah.
It can
Right.
take every, suppose like Llama 1B I'm working on, it only takes like 4,000 tokens.
Right.
More than 4,000 tokens, it will trim it off. So then we might not get context independent answers. So is there any? I'm just curious. Like, is there any technique they do to get the models preserve these knowledge? Like usually there is a technique, so they are following in backend of OpenAI. I'm not sure like what they did, so I'm just curious. Like
It's a great question.
yeah, how they are doing it. So usually in APIs, like they do have to preserve all the conversations. Then whenever the user opens and click on a new request, then it should render all the data based on that. It should give the following up answers. So I was just curious, like how they did.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Because if they were working on this APIs thing, they would have explored in that area as well. Like because that was also a good use case, I feel.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
While he's
Go ahead, sorry.
searching for what he's searching for, we get, I don't know how many slides are in that deck, but there's quite a bit that we're
Do you wanna
also
continue?
thinking about that most organizations are as well. Take PII sanitization. That's one of the things that is everybody's concern. How do you use that? Because that information is useful. It's needed contextually for who you might be interacting with, but you might not want to pass that along to the LLM, right? That's information you want to maybe keep. So for one of the plugins, I think this rolls out in the next release, and you can develop yourselves or other organizations maybe looking into as well. I know Kong is
It's actually a sidecar. There's a PII sanitization sidecar that we're going to be, you can run next to Kong.
Yeah.
And before it sends any information up to an LLM, it'll sanitize it.
There's
Send it.
26
And
parameters.
it'll also do it on the return to put it back in.
So you can basically, there's 26 parameters out of the box. It'll go off of, and then you can add additional. And as that comes in, it sanitizes, passes it through to get the information you need from the LLM, comes back, will repopulate,
Yeah.
and then pass it back. So the LLM never sees the PII, right, the information that it probably shouldn't, but still allows, you know, that user experience to be very tailored and specific with the information that's needed. So these are the things that, you know, organizations are thinking about that we're trying to help work with them to solve for, and that, you know, I'd be curious to hear what other things anybody else has encountered or is working on that maybe we could take back and keep thinking about as well. And if that's probably the main use case for everyone, then that's fine as well.
Do it in video.
In video?
In video.
Remove PII. Stuff like that from videos.
That would be. I'm sure there's a way to do it.
I'm sure there is a way to do it. I know that's beyond your use case.
We've had challenges with RAI enforcement around like toxicity or violence or bias, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I mean, OpenAI will give you certain measurements on it, and it seems to do like a sort of a decent job, or no, actually probably the best job I've seen. But as we've tried to like add in an RAI API to do some of the filtering kind of before it gets to the LLM, that's been challenging.
Sure.
So from what are our plugin use case for semantic prompt guard? Because there's one that does
kind of
very
Yes,
fighting with
yeah,
the
there's some,
AI
yeah, there's
stuff,
some.
So you can say, hey, we don't want to have semantically, we don't want to have.
Weird, but-
Sorry, I'm speaking over.
No. So anyway, that I don't have an answer to that. We're evaluating solutions, but we're on the search for.
Kick the tires on the. We have a semantic. I want to say it's the
Semantic prompt guard,
guardrails.
there we go, semantic prompt guard.
prompt guard. So
Okay,
there,
so
it's
the body is so here.
so you can say, you know, we don't want political discussions right within this, or but you without the semantic aspect of it, you almost have to kind of account for every scenario that could exist, versus being able to, you know, be a little bit more generic and then also have it, you know, if somebody asks it one way, somebody asks it another, like you don't have to necessarily, my understanding is necessarily anticipate every variety of that, and it's gonna, you know, use some level of intelligence to try to help. And I don't know if David's prepared
I'll
to do a
just
demo of
show
that
you.
or not, but
Oh, yeah.
if he is, I'll be impressed.
So this uses a semantic prompt guard. So this particular route, OpenAI semantic prompt guard. Now if I look at the configuration for that plugin, let's see. Where's the, oh, come on. Sorry, now I just sit.
How are you solving for that today? Or you're not yet, still trying to figure that one out.
If someone's using the OpenAI models, it gives back some pretty nice scores. So I think if someone says like, hey, this is important for my use case,
Yeah.
like generating code, like checking for bias is kind of less of an issue. But if they need those kind of things, then we would steer them towards one of the models that does it implicitly while we're evaluating vendors right now.
It sounds like you're less concerned about the prompts and more about what the response is. You're trying to prevent certain responses from getting out.
No, it's sending
Is it just
requests.
It's both ways,
It's both
really.
ways,
Like
really.
you almost have to treat the LLM like a person, because the person sending in the prompt could be doing bad things, and you want to check for that. But then the LLM can go off the rails and send something back bad, and so you kind of want to watch in both directions if you can.
I'm just trying to find the configuration.
world.
In case
So
of
it's an
LLMs,
iProms, computers.
What's that?
In case of LLMs, we should be very specific about the prompts, how we craft for the desired responses. Like but humans, if we ask some basic questions, it might we should have some. We will already have some around neighbor data like in our mind, so we can answer. Like, but LLMs we should specifically mention that prompt. Like suppose it depends on the. We should give a little bit about. I feel like in the prompting. So prompting plays a very good role in getting a
To give
decide
context.
responses
Yeah.
in LLMs, when you use LLMs.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of prompting techniques like out there, and few short chain of thoughts, a lot of
Yeah, there's a lot of good guides online about like how to write prompts. Those are definitely useful to look at. But even then, like even after you like spend some time crafting like a really well written prompt, it's kind of wild to like send it in a bunch of times and see it just behave differently, right? Like I mean, you could using a seed as a way to try and peg it down. Lowering the temperature is a way to reduce the amount of creativity that you see coming out of it, but it's still
Even without that,
Yeah.
sometimes you get, you know, the behavior is different enough, and you're just like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
Because it is always depends on the token prediction. So
Right.
always when you query a model, it always changes the probability of getting the next word, but it will make sure to give the semantic words in the context. Like the word, the text will differ, but at the end the meaning might contribute the same when you see the responses. I feel like
You should.
Most of the time,
Most of the time.
but not all of the time.
Yeah.
not all of them.
Yeah.
You can validate by prompting 10 times and picking up the most relevant answer by having some similarity based index, so that you can.
And that's how we do our testing
Yeah.
to validate the models when we switch. But yeah, then you have to review that when it goes wrong.
Yeah. Oh, and to be clear, when I was talking earlier about I like to peg to a very specific model to try and reduce the creativity or the variability in what I get. I'm a huge believer in the value of an AI gateway. The AI gateway makes it very easy to peg to the model I want and test, but new models come out all the time, and sometimes I'm like, oh, well, my tests were running well, but this new model looks really great, let me just switch to that one. And the gateway makes that like then dead simple to just kind of putting a new value for the model, and suddenly like I'm hitting a different endpoint and potentially getting better behavior. So, and I think, do you let it choose the model or do you specify the model? That's more a matter of like philosophy, right? And people probably know where I'm at, but but that doesn't take away from the value of the AI gateway, in my opinion.
We make the Ferrari. You get to drive it though. It's up to you. And how you drive it.
So observability is pretty important as well, right? You gotta be able to control costs, see how much, each LLM is being used, how many tokens are being sent. So a lot of our plugins have very specific LLM metrics that we're exposing.
You mentioned performance before. Like the infrastructure that's running this needs to be highly performant, because again, this is ultimately going to be delivering your customer experience and your internal associate experience or whatever. So those are the other factors that go along with this.
I have a slightly different opinion. I mean, I think we'll get to that point. LLMs are freaking slow. So compared to all other API latency, like it kind of, in my opinion, doesn't matter how much you tune up the other things. Your LLM's still going to be like really slow. So.
It depends upon the inference timing. Like LLMs take a lot of time to generate the tokens on the next text. So the main dependency is on the LLM side, the timing. So I don't think this depends upon the API interaction. API interaction will become very easy, but that inference will take a lot of time. Like even, I've seen, like I've trained so many, like 3-4 types of models. Every model has the same time. Like it takes a lot of time to get your answers for your prompt.
I think the semantic caching was probably one of the highest requested things that we've seen from our customers we came out with, where they were like, if you guys had that, we would love that. And so those, again, we're trying to take that feedback for that exact reason.
So the semantic caching example that you gave with the
steak,
the steak versus ribeye. So is it sending the exact same prompt then? It's just saying steak. It's saying ribeye doesn't make a difference on normalizing that.
It's taking it from the vector database. It's just, it
So
realizes
it's a
it's
slight
cached.
augmentation, so it's
Yeah.
taking the change, but it's building on top of the last one?
If I had to guess how it's working, they're taking the incoming prompt, they're generating the
Encoding it.
embedding or the vector
Embedding,
based
yeah.
on the request.
Yeah.
And then what they're doing is they have a cache that says, hey, I already have a vector that has the answer sitting right here. And your question looks really close to this question. So I'm just gonna go ahead and hand you the answer that I already have sitting there.
That's right.
No call to the LLM, and that's how it's so fast, right?
Right, I get that, but what if that subtle change in that parameter made a big difference in the correct answer?
Yeah, how do you
And
tune
you're
that, or
not
what's
giving the correct
scoring?
answer,
Right.
you're giving the
Yep.
cached answer, which in this case is bogus now.
That's possible, but LLMs and the embeddings have gotten really good at understanding the subtleties of language. Yeah, I think it's
It
a
would be
valid
another
point.
thing I would like to know, like you said, I think it tells you it's a cached answer when it comes back, because if you find a problem with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, it definitely calls it out.
That's the
like,
only
you
thing
can
I
see
don't
it
like
clearly.
about the plugins is if I'm an application developer, I don't necessarily know, or I need a way to know what black magic is
Well,
happening
right.
with my stuff,
Sure.
you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like you need to know how an LLM works. Or do you?
Well, no, but unless it's changing, unless it's one of the fundamental things that's changing,
Right.
you know, your
Well, as
system.
you know, okay, depending, it's how you're using the gateway.
Right.
Right. If you're a developer and you have active control over which plugins you're using on the gateway, you know which plugins you're using. You know what's happening to your browse. If it's just some API, it's not like an OpenID Connect plugin, right?
I probably should know this, but do the plugins allow you to kind of trace through them, step through them, and evaluate things as it's being executed or anything like that?
You talking about the AI plugins or plugins in general?
Yeah, plugins in general.
Yeah, yeah. So there's, not to get into too much Kong, but I guess we're already there. So,
In the generic solution.
in the generic solution, we have this thing called active tracing.
Kong active tracing.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, so you can start this tracing session, and I can call this test. And I'm going to select. Oh, I don't have an environment stood up. Darn it! Hold on. Let me just do that while we're talking. What time is it?
It's the next talk.
It's quarter,
Or
10 to 8,
10 to 8.
10 to 8.
How much time do we have?
Until people start leaving or falling asleep.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
you might start falling asleep now. No. Let me just create something real fast.
We're gonna have to
Close
end
to
with
my
some fireworks, so let's.
All right. So
Yeah,
at any
it's
rate,
my witching hour too.
Yeah.
you can enable active tracing, and it will tell you exactly how long each plugin took to run, which plugin ran, and how long the router takes to run, and it gives you a nice.
So
graphical
metrics,
view.
but you can't step through it.
No, you can't step.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, but if what if I took Kong, put it in a Docker image, and then set up Lua
Connect to a remote
breakpoints?
debugger.
Yeah.
I've tried. It's hard.
Oh, really? Okay.
I've tried to set up a remote debugging session with Kong. And every time I ask our developers, they're like, "Yeah, we always try to do it, then we just figure out the problem, and we never do." Which, it's
Well, that's good to know.
theoretically, in theory, it's possible. I've never done it. So
I just think, if you're going to put a lot of logic
we
in,
step through code anymore. Come on.
yeah, if you're going to put a lot of logic in the plugins that are, that app developers may or may not know is even happening.
Right.
There's got to be some way to have visibility
tables.
into that, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
troubleshoot.
We get people all the time who are like, what's happening in just the regular gateway?
Right.
That's good, so.
Well, let that be a lesson to you. So you probably shouldn't have complex logic in your plugins when you're doing gateway stuff. I mean, the more complex you get, it's like, maybe they shouldn't be there. Because then you're just adding voodoo to your process. And you'd rather add that in a place where it makes more sense. That's
To be fair to John, you've got the prompt decorator, which is injecting things in the prompt, which
Yes.
could directly affect the behavior or the result,
yes,
and it would be invisible to you.
it would be correct. You don't know what's going
The
on.
decorator a lot of times is like, hey, I need this response in German or something, right? And they're doing things to present that.
Just whatever you can
The
do to
semantic
tooling.
thing is
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
interesting, and
Whatever
if
you can
there's
do
a
to the
fine
tooling
tuning.
to be able to trace through it, see it,
Yeah.
step through it, whatever, so you are transparent about the voodoo magic that's going on.
Right.
And again, these are things that we're thinking about developing. Again, this is supposed to be open discussion, which I've loved how much we've had. Are there other things that you guys have interacted with, thought of, your companies are building, things that we could also or should be also thinking about that are use cases? Because I think we're showing you a majority of what we've been thinking about, and we're hearing other organizations thinking about.
So you had a slide on a universal API.
Yeah.
So that's now an API that the gateway provides that abstracts away other models. Then you mentioned that there was a cache flag that was coming back that indicated the response came back from the cache.
Yeah. I think it might have been headers.
So is there any other metadata that comes back to John's point that describes any pre or post processing that occurred?
Like
the
you
plugins.
can give it a list of all the plugins that fire this request.
Yeah, in some kind of debug mode or something, you know.
Yeah.
There are on the gateway there's a debug flag that you can send. In the headers it will send back, which route is matching, which plugins we're firing, and there is a way to do it.
Nice.
But we just see it right there. Hit. So it's just refines in the cache status.
There you go.
Okay.
So you got cache response.
There's the cache
I
key.
knew there was a way.
And there's the time to live the cache, content length, trace ID, all that good stuff.
Cool.
This one, okay, so that's not, it's the cache timed out, so that was a cache miss. And it gives you which server, Raylan, and Raylan.
Hit it again.
I'll change this to steak.
Are you able to dial in like the semantic similarity, like to say?
That was a sub-millisecond.
I'm not, that's a good question. I don't know, probably. I looked at that configuration and there was a lot of knobs, so I'm guessing yes.
I'm fine-tuning the cache.
Yeah, to find out how it semantically
How
does
similar
it.
does it have to be before you
similar.
get
That's
it?
when he was asking that, that's where my mind went, which was
Yeah.
how much parameters do we allow?
Let's see.
And that's also how much do you want to allow to your development team, or do you want to control it as a COE?
Yeah, I would think you'd have to leave that to
Yeah,
the
there's
development
gotta be
team.
some tweaks. Semantic cache, let's see, configuration reference. Message count bag, ignore system prompts, ignore tool prompts, stop failure, exact caching. There's embeddings you can put in there for, I don't know.
Let's fly through the final
Yeah.
slide. I think there's a summary slide which talks about
Distance
general.
metric, is it distance metric, would that be, sorry?
Yeah, distance,
Oh,
yeah,
there you go, it's part of the plugin config.
cool.
So you can tweak a lot of things in these plugins. So distance, there's thresholds and dimensions.
That's our question. The documentation is limited to the company or like it's.
Yeah, these are common plugins. So, yes. You wanna go back to the zip
Yeah,
through
go
the.
to the slide tree. Let me just see if I just go through here, anything else that's valuable discussion points. Token rate limiting.
We also have the semantic load balancing as well. So you can load balance between LLMs, say this content is more suited for steak. It'll automatically load balance to that LLM, and then if it asks a different question, it would go somewhere else.
Ooh, I'd want to use that for whether or not I hit a thinking model, because that's way more expensive, and I
Right.
would want tough questions to go to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's all in part of the proxy advanced, the AI proxy advanced plugin.
That's
So-
cool.
So if user wants to use advanced.
Oh, did you break out the tokens? No.
Charge the models, LLM could
Sorry,
charge
tick
them.
token looks
How
similar
the
to
pricing
when
is
it showed you how many tokens your words are gonna
Well, I
generate.
mean, how it,
If for the OER,
So you can actually put in like your prompt.
No, we-
How
no,
you-
we
it'll
will hook
show
up
you
to
how it breaks it into the tokens to go into the LLM.
So we're not gonna-
Or how the LLM will do it basically in chunks, it's kind of neat.
yeah, so whatever the model costs is what you're going to, so we're giving
So
you.
you're setting parameters that are totally up to you, like, hey, we bought this many tokens, and then you can decide, I only want to use this
Sometimes be a
one.
little bit
It's up to you to
repetitive,
decide,
pretty
we're just
awesome,
giving you
like,
So
it
we
breaks
have
down
rate
by,
limiting,
like,
we
Send
were
it to me.
prompt
Yeah,
limiting.
yeah.
Token limits. So that's a plugin you can apply on that service, and once it hits a limit, it'll start denying requests.
Then like we are
What is
so
going
we can buy the tokens from
What is going on?
Not through us.
Not
We're
through
just
us. We're just a
proxy.
proxy.
We
just
use
proxy
users
through-
to help
You're not
you
We're connectivity.
control your path.
What is going on?
Okay, so we have to release the bot or like how?
No, you just point the proxy to a different model.
That's why you have the one API. You just call it one API and it can
Ten
go
minutes
to
of trouble.
all the LLM.
We have to deploy them.
In a good.
Or use the ones that are up on it. Yes, you would deploy them.
But you could say, right,
My
like,
kind
hey,
of
once I run out of
trouble.
tokens, go to the free model now, so I don't, run over my budgeting or whatever, things like that. Which is kind of where, again, these are use cases we're hearing, that customers are thinking through that we're trying to help solve them.
Also still wants to use the high-end model, then it shouldn't,
Yeah, then just
it
don't
should
set
be
that
a way
back.
that he should get more tokens or like how.
Yeah, it would be up to you to get, to work in however you procure. We're just proxying it. I'm trying to think of what's worth if we're gonna end on something or anything.
Yeah, give us a big bang.
Right, where's the fireworks?
Wow, these
Oh,
are,
so
we
this-
do have a lot of slides.
There's a lot, again, marketing's great at building slides, so.
Yeah.
This is something I don't think, either Dave and I are well prepared to talk about this. This is next release.
Yeah.
But RAG is something that, we are attempting to really help, I guess, augment, from a development standpoint.
I may enjoy
And
it.
so,
Retrieval augmented generation. So it's basically what it is it'll reach out to external data source and combine that to make more accurate response, less hallucinations and things of that nature. And today, that's a very manual process.
So you could specify data sources that you want.
Yes.
To be included.
To include,
Given emphasis.
yes.
So what you might like train up to like 7 months old. So there is a
Ted,
time
Jessica, I don't know if you heard here, but
you want the real time updates from that.
part of the conversation last week with the RAG portion that we're trying to add in, I think Dana and I are well prepared to talk to it, but if you
Remember that this is
conceptualize that.
All the links take
Um,
that.
Well, this isn't out yet, so this is still next
The
release.
query, the prompt will be hit to that database and it will get the like the metadata and then it will pass in the LLM. Then we will get the more accurate data, which is actually great.
Oh, cool.
That's right. Does that make sense?
Cool, so why would you want an AI gateway? We'll wrap here, right? You're ultimately looking as an organization on how you can leverage technology, drive better customer experience, become more efficient, augment your workforce, but you need to do that in a way that you can govern, you can secure, you can have cost controls over. This becomes extremely expensive if you don't have a handle around that. You ultimately want to accelerate your developer productivity. As you add more complexity, you add more rules, you add more governance, you add more security, you crush developer productivity ultimately. So you really need a way to be able to leverage new tools and technology without also impeding that development experience. And
It's analogous to normal gateway use case.
Yeah.
Basically, but geared towards AI.
And so at some point, this is as far as an organization as we've gotten to date with our platform, and we've continued in discussions like we're having tonight to get more feedback from how you all, others, customers, organizations are leveraging AI, what use cases they're seeing and they're solving for, and then looking to an AI gateway if you don't have one today, or you're developing one, or you're evaluating what's out in the market. These are the type of things that we're hearing and that you should be potentially thinking about as you're
There's your
Is that
multimodal,
looking
there's your
for?
multimodal there, Ted. Language, textual,
And,
function,
push the button.
function calling.
fireworks go on.
All right, yes.
Let
you,
me
everybody.
end on this slide.
Yes.
We appreciate everyone having the open mind to hear what we've been working on, to have this discussion and to really share, because I think there was some really interesting, really engaging discussion. So it doesn't end at this point, we continue, but that's all we've got in particular.
Yeah, it's a fast-moving space, so I imagine we'll probably have topics along these lines again.
No doubt. No doubt.
Thank
Excellent.
you.
Yes.
Yeah, well, 8 o'clock. So